You're lying in bed after a day that felt like it would never end. Your body is exhausted. The soft pillows are calling out to you as if inviting you to escape into sleep. But the moment you close your eyes, your mind begins to speak. Restless thoughts come flooding in about work, about others, about things that have passed and things yet to come. They pour in like a storm crashing into the stillness of your room, and you find yourself swept away. It's no longer sleep, it's anxiety. It's no longer rest, it's inner turmoil. In that moment, you might remember one simple truth. You can't control the storm, but you can learn to be calm within it. This video will walk with you through 7 core principles to help you train your mind like a Stoic, so you no longer live at the mercy of your circumstances, but rise to become the master of your own self. 1. Distinguish between what you control. Distinguish between what you control and what you don't. And what you don't. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Epictetus. This seemingly simple statement holds within it the key to freeing ourselves from much of the suffering we so often chain ourselves to. In Stoic philosophy, this isn't merely a rational distinction. It is a way of life, a new lens through which we view the world and ourselves. Because more often than not, we suffer not from what actually happens, but from unmet expectations, futile attempts to change the unchangeable, and helplessness when things don't go our way. You've likely felt this before. Imagine this. One day you discover someone is speaking ill of you behind your back. Your first reaction might be anger, hurt, the urge to justify yourself or strike back. But can you really change their mind? Can you control what others say? No. The only thing you can control is how you choose to respond. It is precisely at the intersection between what happened, and how we respond that inner power begins to form. When you stop trying to control the external world and instead turn inward to master yourself, that is when you step onto the path of a true Stoic. Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control and some things are not. Epictetus. Happiness and freedom, as Epictetus once said, begin the moment you fully grasp this fundamental truth. It's no coincidence that people who remain calm in chaos often seem so powerful and magnetic. They don't possess some magic spell to make life easier than everyone else. What they've learned is the art of letting go of what's beyond their control and focusing fully on what they can do. But this isn't easy. Our instincts push us to try and control everything from how others perceive us to what tomorrow might bring. And when left unchecked, this instinct quietly builds a life filled with anxiety, a life of constant reacting, constant disappointment, and slowly losing ourselves. Picture yourself driving as a heavy rain begins to fall. The light turns red, horns blare, and another driver cuts in front of you. You can't control any of that, but you can grip the wheel firmly, take a deep breath, and choose not to let anger take over. That's real control, not over the circumstance, but over yourself within the circumstance. This distinction between what can and cannot be controlled is not merely philosophical. It is a skill that can be trained daily. And it begins with one deceptively simple yet revolutionary question. Is this within my control? When someone criticizes you, ask yourself, can you control what they say? No. But you can control whether you allow their words to poison your mind. When you're anxious about an exam result, ask yourself, can you control the outcome? No. But you can control how you study, how you prepare, and how you care for your sleep. Every time you ask that question, you bring your mind back to the present, back to what's in your hands, back to where you can actually take action. And in doing so, you begin to train your mind like a Stoic. The world will remain unpredictable. You'll still be misunderstood, rejected, hurt. But the difference is you won't be consumed by it. You'll become the person who watches the storm, not the one swept away by it. Hold on to that truth. You may not control everything, but you can always control yourself. And that is where true power begins. The gap between stimulus and response. 2. The gap between stimulus and response. There is a quiet miracle often forgotten in the rush of modern life. The space between stimulus and response. A disapproving glance, an unfair criticism, a cold message. These are all triggers that can provoke an immediate reaction of anger, pride, or pain. But the moment you realize you have the power to choose your response is the moment you step out of the role of an emotional victim and become the master of your inner world. As Viktor Frankl once wrote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. This isn't just a psychological truth. It's a foundational pillar of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics believe that we do not control what happens to us, but we have full control over how we respond. And that ability isn't innate. It is the result of a trained mind sharpened through awareness and disciplined introspection. Picture this. You're in a meeting and your manager unexpectedly criticizes you unfairly. Your instinctive reaction might be to lash out, defend yourself, or silently retreat in frustration and hurt. But if you apply Stoic principles, you'll instead pause for a precious 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, you take a deep breath, detach from the emotional impulse, clawing at you, and ask yourself, what response reflects the person I aspire to become? This is not a weakness, it's strength, it's an agency, it's control. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In this single sentence lies the essence of real power. Strength does not come from dominating circumstances, but from mastering oneself. A person who cannot govern their reactions is being manipulated by their emotions and becomes their slave. But one who understands that serenity is not something external, but exists within that inner space, will remain unshaken amidst chaos. The untrained mind reacts like a wild beast, impulsively, unconsciously, without reflection. But a mind that is consistently trained becomes the gatekeeper of your soul, allowing you to choose composure over rashness, wisdom over wrath. So how do you train for this? Start with a simple yet powerful practice, the 3-second stillness rule. Whenever you are about to react emotionally with anger, hurt, or anxiety, pause for 3 seconds. Take a deep breath. Become aware that you are standing in that space, and in that space you make a choice. Will you react on impulse, or will you respond with reason? Over time, you will find your mind growing more resilient. Not because life becomes less difficult, but because you are no longer ruled by what lies beyond your control. The journey to mastering your mind doesn't happen overnight. It is built through countless small decisions. The choice to remain calm, to listen, to hold back from reacting hastily. And each time you make that choice, you carve a deeper Stoic mark into your soul. But if you believe that mastering your reactions is the ultimate goal, think again. The Stoics didn't just learn how to respond wisely, they prepared themselves in advance for the worst possible outcomes, so they would never be shattered by loss or surprise. In the next part, we will explore one of the most profound principles in Stoic philosophy: premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. This is not pessimism. It is an inner strategy to remain grounded and unshakable through life's inevitable storms. Are you ready? 3. Anticipate the worst that can. Anticipate the worst that can happen. Most of us are caught in the grip of expectations. We hope things will go smoothly, that people will treat us fairly, and that every effort will be rewarded. We dive into each day with a fragile belief that things will be okay until they're not. A sudden failure, a cold rejection, an unexpected setback. Each hits like a slap in the face, leaving us stunned because our minds were never trained to handle it. But to the Stoics, inner preparation is just as vital as outward action. They are not pessimistic, nor do they abandon hope. They simply foresee misfortune so that when it arrives, it cannot overpower them. As Seneca once wrote, "Expect the worst so you can prepare your mind for the best." This is not an act of surrender, but rather an art of conscious living, teaching us to embrace reality with a steady heart. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the Roman Empire, governed a nation while facing plagues, wars, and betrayal from within his own court. On freezing battlefields, he never allowed himself to fantasize about smooth outcomes. He famously said that life is more like wrestling than dancing. It is a place where you will be pushed, knocked down, and hurt. But if you know that going in, you'll brace yourself better and rise faster. From that very spirit Stoic, philosophy offers us a powerful mental practice called premeditatio malorum. The premeditation of adversity, not to see our anxiety, but to befriend risk, to turn fear into readiness. Before every important event, a job interview, an investment decision, or a difficult conversation, take 5 quiet minutes. Imagine what could go wrong. Rejection, collapse, anger. Let your mind walk through these possibilities and then ask yourself, if this happens, how will I respond? At first glance, this exercise may seem like it creates tension, but in truth, it does the opposite. When your mind becomes familiar with difficulty, it loses the power to shock you. Your brain, instead of spiraling into panic, switches into a familiar mode. I've thought about this. Now, it's time to apply the plan. That's when calm takes over and your inner strength kicks in. Take Amelia Earhart, the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. In a tiny plane beneath the vast sky, she did not embark with blind optimism. She knew full well a single mistake, an engine failure, a sudden weather shift could all cost her life. But it was precisely because she visualized the worst-case scenarios that she wasn't paralyzed by them. She meticulously prepared for each risk, from learning how to navigate in total radio silence to practicing emergency landings. She wasn't fearless because she ignored danger, but because she had already lived through it in her mind before takeoff. That is the Stoic spirit. Don't run from fear. Walk straight through it, armed with preparation. Don't let hope lull you to sleep. Let wisdom lead the way. Amelia didn't fly on luck. She flew on mental readiness. the very force that turned the impossible into achievement. And that is what we too must learn. Life won't always go your way. People will leave. Plans will fall apart. You will fall. But that doesn't mean you've failed. True failure only happens when your mind surrenders. By envisioning adversity, you are building a kind of mental immune system. When the unexpected arrives, you are no longer a victim. You are someone who has already faced it, at least in your mind. And that is what separates those who panic from those who act with poise. Because in the end, your mind wasn't made to control circumstances. It was made to control itself. And that is where your greatest power lies. Awareness is the root of all emotions. 4. Awareness is the root of all emotions. You're driving down a familiar road when, out of nowhere, a car suddenly cuts in front of you, forcing you to slam on the brakes. Your heart races, blood rushes to your face, and within seconds, a wave of anger surges through you. Is that guy insane? You shout in your mind, fuming with frustration. But hold on a second. What really just happened? Was it that car itself that made you angry? Or was it your interpretation of the event that gave rise to the anger? Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." This quote is more than just a sharp observation. It's a powerful reminder about the nature of emotions. In Stoic philosophy, emotions don't arise directly from external events, but from our internal interpretation of those events. That car cutting you off wasn't inherently infuriating. It was a neutral act. The anger arose because you judged it as irresponsible, dangerous, or even disrespectful. But what if you knew the driver was rushing their child to the hospital? Your feelings might shift entirely. This leads us to a profound truth. Awareness is the root of all emotions. What you feel depends entirely on what you perceive. Awareness, also known as the ability to observe your own mind, is the first and deepest layer that shapes you. Your emotional response. When you train yourself to recognize your thoughts, you begin to separate from the unconscious loop of reaction. You're no longer someone who is simply angry, hurt, or sad. You notice that you are feeling angry, hurt, or sad. And in that very moment, you gain the power to choose. Emotions are a part of being human. But Stoicism teaches us that between stimulus and response, there is always a space. And if you are mindful enough to recognize that space, you gain control. That space is where emotion can be transformed, where anger can become compassion, where disappointment can become learning, and where hurt can become inner strength. Here's another example. You send an important message to someone you love, but hours go by with no reply. A sense of disappointment creeps in. You begin to interpret, "They don't care about me. I must not matter to them at all." These thoughts spiral into anxiety, frustration, and even heartbreak. But if you shift your perspective, maybe they're just busy. It might not mean anything negative at all. You suddenly feel more at ease. The event hasn't changed, but your perception of the event has, and so your emotion changes with it. So, how can you train this? Here's a simple but incredibly powerful exercise. Write down a recent situation that made you angry, sad, or disappointed. Then rewrite that situation from a different angle, one that's more positive, more objective, or simply less judgmental. This exercise isn't about denying your emotions. It's about realizing that your emotions are not absolute truths. They are the result of a specific way of seeing, and that perspective can always be changed. By doing this regularly, you are training your mind, training it like a Stoic would. And each time you do, you expand that space between stimulus and response. You gradually become the master of your inner world, no longer a prisoner to your emotions. And finally, remember this: your mind is not your enemy unless you let it wander unconsciously. Observe it, engage with it, and you'll realize you may not control the world, but you can absolutely control how you live within it. What about you? Has there been a situation recently where you overreacted? Share it in the comments and try rewriting it through the lens of a Stoic. Perhaps just a small shift in perception could open a big door to peace within you. 5. Turn adversity into training. Turn adversity into training. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. This seemingly simple statement contains a profound truth of Stoic philosophy. Life is not a smooth, straight path without hindrances. Life, in essence, is a series of obstacles, and it is precisely those obstacles that give us the ground to train ourselves. For ordinary people, adversity is frightening, something to be avoided, something to be eliminated as quickly as possible. But to someone living in the spirit of Stoicism, adversity is not the enemy. It is the gym of the mind, where every challenge becomes an opportunity to forge resilience, clarity, and self-mastery. A healthy body cannot be built by lying on a sofa all day, just as a strong mind cannot be forged in absolute comfort. Adversity is the heavy weight in the gym of the soul. It forces us to strain, to summon our strength, to learn how to control our breath and our will. And each time we overcome a trial, our mind grows stronger, just as a muscle does after training. Imagine you have just gone through rejection in love. Your heart aches, your pride is wounded, and in that moment, you want nothing more than to retreat into self-pity. But through the Stoic lens, you will see that this is not an ending. It is an exercise for deeper self-understanding. Instead of letting the pain consume you, you can ask, what does this rejection reveal about me? What does it show me I need to improve? How can I become a more attractive, more mature version of myself? When you ask these questions, you transform failure into a lesson, suffering into fuel for growth. You are not crushed by circumstance. You are using it as a weight to train. Likewise, in work, a failed project or a misunderstanding with a colleague can shake your confidence. But the Stoic does not remain in anger or disappointment. They see this as a chance to learn clearer communication, greater patience, and to realize that true honor does not lie in the eyes of others, but in the ability to remain upright and steadfast within oneself. Under this light, adversity ceases to be a minus sign in life. It becomes a plus sign, an essential element of growth. And yet, to turn adversity into training, you cannot just stand by and admire the idea. You must practice. One small but powerful exercise is to write down the failures you have experienced. It could be the time you failed an exam, the time you lost a job opportunity, or the time a relationship you deeply invested in suddenly ended. But instead of writing them as wounds, write them as lessons. How did each moment train you? Did you learn patience, discipline, and humility? Did you discover hidden strength within yourself? By rewriting them this way, you will not only see the darkness of adversity, but also the light it brings. And the strange thing is, once we begin to accept adversity as an inseparable part of life, we feel freer, no longer haunted by invisible fears, no longer trapped in the sense of being a victim of fate. Instead, we feel like warriors, in training where every wound, every fall is still a step forward. A Stoic does not expect adversity to disappear. They expect themselves to grow through adversity. Take a moment to look back at your life. Weren't the most painful times also the times you learned the most after each failure? Did you not become tougher, richer in experience, and wiser? Then adversity has never truly blocked you. It has been paving the way for you, and when you walk this path with the heart of a Stoic, you do more than merely live. You grow day by day, hour by hour. 6. Practice self-discipline every day. Practice self-discipline every day. Have you ever had a morning like this? The alarm goes off, but instead of jumping out of bed, your hand reaches for the phone. Then an entire hour slips away unconsciously. You scroll through endless feeds, skim meaningless news, pause at a few pictures, glance at a few posts, and by the time you look up, the hours are gone. Your spirit is no better, and it feels as if the whole day has already slipped out of your control from the very first moment. If you do not master your habits will master you, and the result is a mind constantly dragged around by trivialities. You cannot expect yourself to stay calm when angry, clear-headed when panicked, or strong when defeated. If every day you surrender to small yet persistent habits, that is why self-discipline becomes a principle of survival. Without discipline, philosophy remains theory. But with discipline, philosophy becomes the very breath that animates everyday actions. For the Stoics, discipline is not meaningless severity or harsh restriction. It is the path to liberating the mind from short-term cravings. They practice through simple yet powerful habits. Journaling to reflect inwardly, rising early to embrace silence, restraining desires to preserve freedom, controlling impulses so as not to become a slave to them. Each repeated action was a brick laid in building an inner fortress unyielding against the storms of external emotions. Picture this. Instead of scrolling aimlessly for an hour in the morning, a Stoic chooses to rise early, sit before a blank page, and write down 3 simple lines today. How will I respond as a strong person? How will I face discomfort? How will I remain calm when misunderstood? 3 questions, 3 reminders, only 5 minutes, yet planting seeds of mastery deep into the subconscious. And before closing the journal, he writes 3 affirmations. I can remain calm. I am not defined by circumstances. I am the master of my own reactions. This is not a hollow ritual, but genuine training for the mind. Because the mind is like a muscle. It only grows strong if exercised regularly day by day through repeated acts and through repetition. A new reflex is forged, the reflex of serenity amid upheaval, of steadiness in the face of adversity. Daily self-discipline in Stoic philosophy is how you rebuild your life from the smallest fragments. It begins with not letting a phone dictate your morning. It expands into how you eat, work, converse, and rest. A Stoic does not ask, "Do I like this?" but instead, "Does this help me become a stronger, better person?" When the answer is yes, they choose discipline. When the answer is no, they let it go. And in this way, they preserve control over themselves even when the world around them is in turmoil. Discipline not only helps you master your emotions, but also creates freedom. At first, this may sound paradoxical. How can discipline bring freedom? But think carefully. Is a person enslaved by impulses who eats whenever he craves, lashes out whenever he's angry, procrastinates whenever tempted truly free, or is he shackled by his own instincts? On the other hand, the one who practices restraint, who governs action by reason, is the one truly free. Freedom is not doing whatever you feel like. Freedom is not being forced to obey the dictates of raw impulse. That is why the morning Stoic ritual matters so deeply. Set yourself a small challenge. Each morning before the day begins, write down 3 questions and 3 affirmations. 3 questions to prepare your mind for hardship, and 3 affirmations to remind you of your inner strength. Just 5 minutes, and you have planted the seed of mastery for the day, rather than servitude to circumstance. And if nurtured daily, that seed will grow into a towering tree, steady and unshaken, shielding you through every storm of life. But remember, discipline is not a race. It is a way of living. Do not expect change in a single day. Instead, be patient, be persistent, and allow small habits to lead you step by step toward the serenity of a Stoic soul. And when you have practiced discipline long enough, you will realize a profound truth. Mastering your habits is the key to mastering your emotions. Your mind will no longer be tossed about by the chaos outside, but will become a calm domain where reason reigns. In the next part, we will explore the final principle. Principle number 7. Connect with life values, not chasing temporary emotions. If self-discipline is the fortress you build within, then living in harmony with your values is the torch that lights your path, guiding you not only to strength, but to a life filled with meaning. Connect with life values, not chasing temporary emotions. 7. Connect with life values, not chasing temporary emotions. In life, each of us has at least once been swept away by fleeting emotions. Sometimes it is a sudden joy that makes us forget our long-term goals. Sometimes it is anger that robs us of our calm. And sometimes it is fear that makes us shrink back before a valuable opportunity. Emotions hold immense power, but as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once emphasized, we should not allow ourselves to be entirely led by them. We must learn to place reason and our values above all, for values are what endure, while emotions are but passing waves, arriving and fading in an instant. If you live by your values, you will discover a firm anchor amid life's turbulence. When others insult you, you do not merely react out of wounded pride. You choose to respond in alignment with your values of integrity and composure. When a door closes, instead of drowning in disappointment, you remind yourself of perseverance and relentless effort. Living this way, you become someone who responds with consistency instead of being lifted sky high and then cast down by fleeting emotions. Look at the story of Socrates, the great philosopher of ancient Greece. Accused of corrupting the youth and not worshipping the gods. He had every chance to escape death either by renouncing his beliefs or by fleeing. Yet Socrates chose a different path. He remained steadfast in the highest values of his life, truth and integrity. In court, he declared that a life unexamined is not worth living. Then, with a calm spirit, he lifted the cup of poison, departing this world, but leaving behind an eternal spiritual legacy. His story reminds us that fear may force others into submission, but by living according to values, one becomes immortal, not through the body, but through a shining example that endures for generations. Indeed, if we reflect, we will see that most of life's mistakes often stem from letting emotions lead instead of values. A careless word in anger can shatter a relationship built over decades. A rash decision made in fear can make us miss a precious opportunity. A moment of weakness in desire can leave us with lifelong regret. But in contrast, when every action is rooted in solid values such as integrity, courage, and compassion, we act with clarity, and the results we receive always carry depth and meaning. Training the mind to live by values rather than chasing fleeting emotions is not just theory. It is a concrete process of discipline. One simple yet profoundly effective practice is to write down and reflect on your personal values. You can begin by sitting quietly and writing out the 3 most important values you wish to embody in life. Perhaps they are integrity, perseverance, and compassion. Then each day ask yourself, in my reactions today, have I lived true to these values? Did I let fleeting emotions drive me to act against them? Over time, as this question becomes a habit, you will notice a profound transformation. You will grow less quick-tempered because you know your value is calmness and rationality. You will become less fearful because you know your value is courage and resilience. You will chase short-lived desires less because you know your value is honesty and a commitment to what lasts. And then you will discover a new kind of freedom. Freedom is not doing whatever your emotions urge you to do, but the ability to choose actions based on the deepest values of your soul. This is the truest freedom that Stoic philosophy has always aimed for, the freedom of self-mastery. Finally, remember that emotions are not the enemy. Emotions are a natural part of being human. They come and go like drifting clouds, but to let them steer your life is like allowing a boat to drift with the wind, not knowing where it will land. In contrast, living by values is like casting anchor in the vast ocean. It keeps your boat steady, ensuring you always have direction no matter the storms. In doing so, you not only train your mind to remain composed in all circumstances, but also build a life that is profound, steadfast, and whole. You don't need to change the whole world to find peace. Conclusion. All begins with training your mind, disciplining your thoughts to see clearly what truly deserves your concern and what is better to let go. When you learn to respond with intention instead of being pulled by emotions, you will no longer be a victim of circumstances. When you learn to turn adversity into a tool for growth, you will mature through every challenge. A Stoic is not someone without feelings, but someone who feels everything deeply, yet allows nothing to control them. And when you master yourself, you become the freest person alive. If you find this video helpful, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to join us on the journey of building a resilient mind and a meaningful life.